TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News broadcast to you from Jerusalem. Jerusalem warns that unless the Islamist Hamas releases additional hostages, the gates of Gaza will shut and the gates of hell will open. Israel reiterates its commitment to protect the Druze communities of Southern Syria. The International Atomic Energy Agency reiterates its alarm over Iran's nuclear program. Hamas's refusal to accept the outline of American envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, will unleash Israel's fury upon the Islamist terror organization. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, during a state ceremony commemorating late Prime Minister Menachem Begin, underscored Jerusalem's commitment to the release of all hostages. Jerusalem's top defense official went on to level a fierce threat to Hamas that unless it accepts the American outline and continues to release hostages, the gates of Gaza will shut and the gates of hell will open.
למרות ההפרות החוזרות ונשנות של ארגון הטרור חמאס וסירובו
Despite repeated violations by the Hamas terror organization and its refusal to accept the proposed outline by U.S. President Donald Trump's Mideast envoy Witkoff, we acquiesce to requests by the mediators to grant a number of additional days of negotiations, and in the meantime, we halted all humanitarian aid to Gaza. However, Hamas shouldn't be mistaken. This is only the beginning. And I say it here clearly, if Hamas does not release the hostages shortly, the gates of Gaza will shut and the gates of hell will open. We will return to fighting, and they will meet the IDF in force, in manner which they have yet experienced, until decisive victory is achieved. We will not allow Hamas to control Gaza forevermore. The fight will conclude with two clear achievements: the release of all hostages and the destruction of Hamas governance in Gaza.
The Islamist Hamas immediately responded to Israel, claiming that the only manner in which the hostages would be released is by succumbing to Hamas's demands, which includes an end to the war.
The war criminal Netanyahu and his extremist government bear full responsibility for obstructing the progress of the agreement or any foolishness he may commit by overthrowing it, including the humanitarian consequences related to the Israeli occupation hostages in the Gaza Strip.
In an address to Israel's parliament, or Knesset in Hebrew, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu explained the reason for President Trump's new outline, which was presented to Israel by Washington's top Mideast envoy.
We will not give up on anyone, the living and deceased, hostages. We presented Witkoff because you asked about Phase 2. We presented him our principles for Phase 2, which Hamas rejects. It is for this explicit reason that we adopted the Witkoff outline, President Trump's envoy, and he proposed the following: the gap between the sides on Phase 2 is currently impossible to bridge, and this matter will bring about an explosion. Therefore, instead of an explosion, he essentially proposed a ceasefire for the duration of Ramadan and Passover in exchange for return of all 59 hostages who remain in the hands of Hamas. Up to 24 living hostages, this is the number, up to 24 living hostages, and at least 35 deceased hostages. Again, he proposed this outline because he wanted to ensure that the process persists and that it doesn't fracture. However, while we accepted Witkoff's outline, Hamas once again fortified in its negative position.
Premier Benjamin Netanyahu continued by addressing Israel's northern front to include both Lebanon and Syria.
Terror armies will no longer entrench along our borders. After we forced Hezbollah to its knees in Lebanon, and after we destroyed Assad's army in Syria, we will not allow our enemies in Lebanon and Syria to rebuild their power. In parallel, our hand is stretched out to our Druze allies and our Kurdish friends in the region.
It is important to explain that in recent days, clashes erupted between the Al-Qaeda-affiliated Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, which is aggressively vying for control of Syria under the leadership of Abu Muhammad al-Julani, and local Druze militias in the southern Damascus suburb of Jaramana. The clashes, which erupted after HTS attempted to break through a Druze checkpoint, caught Israel's attention, since Jerusalem committed its protection to the Druze community of Southern Syria. Consequently, Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu and Defense Minister Israel Katz published a joint statement in which they warned that Israel will not allow the radical Islamist terror regime in Syria to harm the Druze, and instructed the IDF to prepare to relay a clear, sharp, and threatening message: if the regime harms the Druze, it will be harmed by Israel. Meanwhile, in response to Jerusalem's leveled threat to Damascus, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, in an address to his AK party, insisted that Israel would not achieve its goals in Syria, claiming it seeks division between religions and sects.
Kalın çizgilerle tekrar çiziyorum.
Those who seek to benefit from the instability of Syria by provoking ethnic and religious affiliations should know that they won't be able to achieve their goals.
Ulaşamayacaklarını bilmelidir. Bölgemizin bir asır önce olduğu gibi tekrar
We won't allow the partition of Syria as they imagine drawing maps.
ayrıştırılmasına müsaade etmeyeceğiz.
It is important to explain that in contrast to Erdogan's claims, the Druze leadership had reached out to Damascus, asking for assurances that they may keep their religious freedoms, along with security guarantees and representation in the new government of Syria. However, Abu Muhammad al-Julani outright rejected all requests for any assurances, seemingly aiming to replicate his old style of leadership, as was displayed in the governorate of Idlib, where he massacred over 400 Druze men, women, and children, and forced his radical Salafist beliefs on all minorities under his rule. Turning to the headquarters of the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna, Austria, where IAEA Director General Rafael Grossi voiced urgency vis-à-vis Iran's nuclear program, after publishing reports that clearly indicate that Iran's nuclear weaponization program is steadily making progress.
What we need is real answers. What we need is an engagement that is moving forward. We need to stop talking about process and start getting some answers as soon as possible.
The nuclear watchdog chief went on to stress the crucial need for concrete diplomacy and praised President Donald Trump for his comments on the matter.
I have been in touch with them informally, and of course there is an idea to be conducting a conversation in a more, I would say, systematic way soon. So my comments on the need for this engagement of this diplomacy are of course what I believe. It is very clear that without this kind of engagement, be it formal, informal, front channel, back channel, lateral channel, I don't know, is indispensable. There has to be a clear idea of the approach. An important statement by President Trump was when he said that he wants to have some form of a deal, some form of an agreement. And this is already an indication.
At the request of France, Britain, and Germany, the IAEA is also formulating a comprehensive report from which the three European powers will ultimately make a determination on whether to trigger the so-called snapback mechanism, which expires on October 18th of this year, and which would reinvigorate, effectively, all international sanctions against the Ayatollah regime. The IAEA Director General went on to urge Tehran to help him dispel international concerns over Iran's nuclear program.
We have been at all times offering technical viable ways to ascertain, to confirm that the Iranian nuclear program is in peaceful purposes. There are doubts, there are concerns, so we are all the time offering Iran ways to set the record straight if they believe that there is an unjustified doubt. So I hope that this year will bring us closer to more clarity there. I think this is needed. In the current context of international tensions, we really need to put this on the right track, I believe.
It is important to highlight that while Iran continues to reject any form of diplomacy with the United States, both Washington and Jerusalem are resolute in their commitment to ensure that the Islamic Republic of Iran does not attain nuclear weapon capabilities.
With regard to Iran, I will say this simply: we will continue to act with determination to prevent Iran from attaining nuclear weapons.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. And as ever, I'd like to seize this opportunity to encourage you, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and salvation of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hassan, wishing you an Erev Mevorach, and God willing, we will see you during our next update. Until then, Shalom from Jerusalem.